Hi, I'm Steve. What I have for you today is an introduction to role-playing. This is the biggest tool in my toolbox, and it's a way to get unstuck and to get rid of internal conflicts. What do I mean by unstuck? We're stuck if we're holding on to anger, if we're anxious all the time, if we have something to grieve and we're not grieving it, if we don't know what to do about something, if we're not sure. We know that something is wrong inside, but we don't know what it is, and we need to figure that out. So those are all ways that we might be stuck. You've heard of the term internal conflict, and you might have heard somebody talk about being of two minds on something, but you probably haven't thought about what that means. There may be two voices in our heads, one saying, do this, and the other one saying, do that. And so they're in conflict with each other. Well, we can get them out in front of us to dialogue with each other. You may already have these voices going on in your head, but they only say a few things and they're on repeat. Do this, do this, do this, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. So there's a tension that just stays there and doesn't lead to anything. We want to move this story along. This is about stepping out of that drama and stepping into authentic power and deep wisdom. The role-playing process I'm going to show you has roots in Jung's active imagination. It's been called shadow work, carpet work, process work, two chairs, psychodrama, splits, four quarters coaching, and voice dialogue. These are all variations on what I'm calling role-playing. This work can go in a lot of directions, but the basic structure is identify the parts that are in conflict, label them, and get them talking with each other. Get into the role of an independent observer and notice what's going on and what needs to happen. Introduce an additional role of a blessing energy and have it bestow blessings on the conflicting parts. And then get the conflicting parts to agree to a compromise and a shifting of roles. So in the example I'm going to show you, we've got John. John is an artist and he's got a block to being able to produce art. So we'll start by identifying the parts in conflict, label them, get them talking to each other. And I'm going to move about the room. This is what I suggest. So I'm going to step into this role right here. So from this place, John is saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to make. I'm stuck. So maybe he calls this part, I don't know. He labels it, I don't know. You could write it down on a piece of paper, put it on the floor, or you could have a pad where you write it down. Let's say he listens for more messages from this part. What else is this part hearing? It's not going to be good enough. That's a big one. It's not going to be good enough. And it can be helpful to take on the posture of the parts. So, it's not going to be good enough. Oh. And that phrase, it's not going to be good enough, indicates another voice. There's a responding voice to the first voice. And so this voice might be saying, it's not going to be good enough. So I've stepped into a different role, and I'm saying, it's not going to be good enough. Don't even try. Why are you putting in all this effort and putting your neck out there? You don't want to do that. So this might be considered a critic. And critics saying, last time you put stuff out, people criticized it. Don't do that again. And it can be good to go back and forth. All right, let's shift into this role and listen to that. So this part is receiving those words. Don't bother, it's not going to be good enough. You put your neck out last time, it didn't work. And you're like, oh, yeah, you're right. I just shouldn't bother. Ugh. So we've set up this dynamic with these two different roles. Now we're going to step into an observer role. So I'm going to take a step back where I can see both of these parts. So I'm stepping out of those roles and into the role of an observer, a coach. And from this place, I'm going to say, what's really going on here? Does this remind me of anything from my past? And what has to happen in this situation? There are a lot of other questions we could ask, but those are three good ones. So what's really going on here? So the critic is berating this guy. This guy can't perform. because he's listening to the critic. All right? Does this remind me of anything from my past? You know, my mother used to criticize me, say, John says. Mother used to criticize me, and I'm remembering that. So I think the critic is really repeating what my mother used to say. All right, so that's some good information. We could possibly change the role of the critic into John's mom. Now that's not to say it's everything that his mother is over here. It's just that part that criticized him and is living in his head and repeating these things over and over to him. All right, third question. What has to happen in this situation? All right, so from the observer point of view, I'd say that the critic needs to back off, and John, the artist, he needs, what does he need? He needs assurance. He needs some comfort. He needs encouragement. Yeah. So that might not be obvious when you're over here. This part might not realize he needs encouragement or what he needs because he's just stuck in his stuff. So it's only by getting into the observer that we might figure out what it is we need in this situation. The third step is introducing a blessing energy. So John might say, all right, in this situation, I know that this guy needs some encouragement. Who can I get to encourage this guy? It could be anybody in the world. It could be a spiritual being. It could be a good dad or good mom. It could be some artist that John appreciates. It might be some sort of elder figure or spiritual figure. I don't know, did I say that already? Maybe he's a Buddhist and he wants the Dalai Lama to give him a blessing. That can happen here. But let's say he wants to play the role of a good parent, maybe a good father. And he wants to come up and he can step right up to where John, the artist who is suffering, and he can say, John, you know, I see that you're suffering and that you're scared, and I want to tell you that the work you're doing, the work you've done is wonderful. It's a gift to the world. Not everybody's going to like it, but that's okay. What you do is special, and I just want you to do what you do. You bring beauty to the world. Go do that. The world needs more beauty. You're a beautiful person. I love you. Go do your stuff. And then so John might step into that small part. He steps into this victim role, and he listens to that coming back at him. I love you. You do what you need to do. You create beauty in the world. We need that in the world. And so John starts to feel that. And it can be good to put your hand on your chest when you're receiving this stuff, or to hold your hands out just to receive this blessing. Now, there's this part, the critic, that we need to deal with. Some people would say, let's beat the hell out of this critic. But I would say, don't do that, because this is part of who you are, and if you're beating the hell out of this, then you're beating the hell out of yourself. So we need some compassion, and we need some boundaries. So we are going to say to this part, let's say I'm using this same blessing energy, and we're going to come up to the critic, and we're going to say, critic, you know, I understand you're trying to protect John here, and what you're doing is not helpful. We need you to just back off. So we can step into the critic and hear that. You need me to back off. I'm not being helpful. Critic says, you know, I've seen him get hurt before. He's going to get hurt again. All right, so let's respond to that. Yes, he might get hurt. People might not like what he does, but we're going to have his back. And I want you to have his back. I want you to defend him. I want you to give him room to make art, and when people criticize his art, you be there to comfort him and to defend him. So then critic tries that on. Okay. That's interesting. So I get to defend him. I like that. Yeah. So I'm gonna make people back off. Okay, I could do that. So maybe we'll call this role, instead of the critic, we'll call him the defender. What do we want this role to be? We want this role to be the artist or the muse, something like that. So instead of being just a victim, this is the part that plays. This is the part that expresses. And we want this part to be free, to play, and the defender can help to make sure that this part feels the freedom to be able to play. All right? And we might step back into the blessing role. And blessing role says, you know, John, I really appreciate how much you play, and we're going to give you the freedom to play. We love your creativity. It's wonderful seeing you play. We love it. So we'll get back into the artist. John is hearing this, you know, I love it. You want me to play? Yeah, I like that. I get to play. That's wonderful. All right. So now to end this, we could take, say, the blessing part, and we want to integrate all of these parts back into one being of ourselves. So blessing part comes here, and I'm bringing the blessing energy over to the muse, and we're integrating those two parts to feeling both of them together in one place. And we come over here to the defender, and we bring that in. So we've got the blessing piece, the artist, the defender, all in one place. Just feel that, integrate it. And we might end with just some sort of gratitude to the universe, blessing to the world, and that's the end of the piece. So, some extra pieces I want to go over. This work is done best in a private space, obviously, where you can move around, stepping into the different roles and speaking the voices out loud. Some people find it helpful to take notes. If privacy is in short supply, this can be done as if it were writing a play between two parts. So you could write out the critic parts, write out the victim parts, write out the blessing parts. The parts can be just about anything. It could be a scared part, an angry part, a boss, a parent. Could be an archetype like the warrior. It could be something that's not even a person, such as the government or the land. You can do this work with a lot of parts, but it gets confusing, and so I recommend, if you're just starting out, to keep it to two parts to start with, one corresponding with another part, usually a critic and a victim. You also don't necessarily need to get into the blessing energy in order for this to be a good piece. Just getting into the observing role and noticing what's happening can often be very helpful. I do want to give some warnings. If you feel overwhelmed or unsafe, then stop the process. And it can be a very powerful thing to do with other people, but there's a danger of screwing up the process and causing trauma. And so you should not attempt to facilitate this work with another person unless you get some training in this type of process. This work is not recommended for people who are mentally ill or people with a history of abuse unless you're being led in it by a licensed therapist. On the subject of expressing anger can be helpful for someone who has trouble accessing their anger, but someone who is already habitually expressing a lot of anger it's not really that helpful to express more anger in this process. There are lots of other good questions from the perspective of the observer. I'm going to put those questions in the video description rather than speak them all right here. Let's return to John just for another minute. Let's say John is starting to work on a piece and he's starting to feel some of that stuff he felt before. He might put his hand on his heart and reflect. Remember what he felt before during this piece. Try to draw some energy so that he can get back into that space of the muse. Remember that he has his defender defending him. Remember those blessings and feel those blessings that he received before, so that he can start doing his work and not feel stymied. There will be more videos exploring this process more deeply and different ways it can be used. If you've liked this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Ring the bell for notifications. Post your questions and comments and pass this along to your friends if you liked it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.